We always say, or my wife and I always say, like, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. If you spend your days just like, I'm just hate going to work, like, that's how you spend your life.
Dave Bolger here, and welcome to Had I Known, an exploration of the Hamilton College experience. This week's guest is Ashley Merriman, class of 1998. You may know Ashley from successful runs as a chef in Seattle at places like Branzino, in New York at places like the Waverly Inn, or perhaps you've enjoyed a great meal at her current restaurant, Prune, in New York City. Or, if you're a reality TV show fan, you may be familiar with her stint on Top Chef Season 6 in Las Vegas. And if you were a student in the mid to late 90s at Hamilton, you probably remember Ashley as both a basketball player and an outspoken leader of what at the time was called GLIBSA, or the Rainbow Alliance, where she was an advocate and an activist in support of gay and lesbian rights at Hamilton. It was a moving and enlightening conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you today. And we're sharing it in more than 9 countries now. Had I Known is now truly international. Welcome to many of our new listeners, and thank you for the continued support. Lots of people have been checking the show out in podcast form. You can get Had I Known anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can go to hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. Again, hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. And speaking of Buzzsprout, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, if you're listening to me and saying, I can do it, this guy does, Buzzsprout is the place to go. It's what I use to get this show up and running, and it couldn't have been easier. Buzzsprout gets your show listed in every major podcast platform. You'll get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, and so much more. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and I'm telling you, the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters, like me, and sign up for Buzzsprout. Follow the link in the show notes. There's a little link there in the show notes. Go ahead, scroll over there. Just click on show notes, scroll, check it out. Yep, there it is. Following that link is going to let Buzzsprout know that I sent you. And when you click on that link, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card when you sign up. And you'll support this show in the process. So let's get your podcast launched today with Buzzsprout. Now let's get into this week's show. As I've said before, one of the reasons I'm doing this show is to get a better understanding of what other people's experiences were like at Hamilton. Now, I knew going in that as a straight white man, my experience was vastly different in many ways than Ashley's, who was the head of the Rainbow Alliance during her time at Hamilton. It's one of the things I always admired about Ashley on campus was that she was willing to put herself out there and be outspoken for what she believed in. And that, to me, it was always something that seemed so intimidating. I always tried hard to keep a secret that at the start of every semester, I would get summoned to the business office and would have to plead my case that the check was in fact in the mail and that please don't kick me out and let me go to class today because I can't, because I didn't pay the bill yet. I would always lie about why I had to go, miss the first part of class or where I was going on that day. When it was inevitable at the start of every semester, I would have to go and beg not to be kicked out. And I was embarrassed by that. I would never want to tell anybody. Now, had I told somebody that, I know I wouldn't have been threatened with physical violence or had to worry about being called vicious, gross names. I wouldn't have to worry about those things, but I still kept it a secret. But those are the things that Ashley had to live with and worry about for the better part of her Hamilton career. So it was no surprise to me when I asked her to join the show and she said that she had largely avoided all things Hamilton for the last 20 years. So I was immensely honored to be able to talk to her in a wide-ranging conversation that covered her time at Hamilton, her successful career as a chef, yes, her time as a reality TV star on Top Chef. And in this, she shares what I think is a great outlook and words that any student currently going through similar pains that Ashley went through need to hear. And I hope it resonates for a lot of people. So here is Ashley Merriman, class of 1998. Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good. You're in your closet.
No, I'm in my recording studio.
Ah, okay. Difference. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's the one place I can hide and get a little quiet in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how's it going?
It's going pretty well. All things considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quarantine, and all things considered, it's okay. Like, I'm trying to find the good in it, and I'm trying to stay on the bright side of things. There's not a lot of bright to be had. But,
I know.
I'm trying to find the bright side of things.
Well, that's good. I guess it's the only thing that keeps you going, right? Is a positive attitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you? I mean, New York seems, relatively speaking, around the country, relatively calm. But how's it going for you professionally?
Well,
you're not open yet, right?
No. So we closed the restaurant on about 6 hours before the mayor said you have to close the restaurant. So we kind of knew that it was coming, and we suspected, but didn't know that our staff, that we suspected that it would be a shit show and that our staff would have a really hard time getting on unemployment. So we tried to jump the gun by a few hours and be like, go file for unemployment. And so that was good, but we closed on the 15th, I think, and have been closed since then. And Prune, which is my wife's restaurant, but now I've worked there for the last 5 years. It's only 30 seats. It's like the smallest restaurant in New York. And so to operate at half capacity would be, we already are barely, you barely make any money in restaurants to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then to lose half your seats is just you just might as well take any money that you made and just flush it right down the toilet.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, there's no possibility of opening at all. And until there's some kind of vaccine or treatment or something. So.
Right. I've seen you be a little bit outspoken on social media about the risks that you put the staff at that people don't consider, right? It's interesting to me that early on, it felt like the restaurant industry got a lot of attention as things were shutting down. Yeah. And that seems to have gone away in favor of let's get back to normal, everything else be damned.
Yeah. It doesn't help, of course, that there isn't a national protocol for anyone anywhere.
Right.
Do we wear masks or do we not wear masks? Do we go back to work or we don't? Or so it doesn't help that there's not just a set standard.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that doesn't help. And then, I do think that it's you have to, New York is maybe different than other cities or smaller cities or suburbs. It's so crowded here, and even what it takes for employees to get to work physically, you have to rely on the subway. And it's every step of the way is putting people at risk. And it's not like you just get in your car and you pop up over to work and you park in a parking lot. So
the things that make the city great are the things that make it terrible in this time. Yeah.
Very risky. Yeah.
So you're, I think I've said this in my email, but your wife's piece in the Times about Prune closing was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
How are you guys surviving, with all of this?
Well, she's also a writer. So she does have this, she writes a column for the Times once a month in the magazine. So she we do have that once a month income, and both of us have managed to tap into the unemployment system, which took me almost 3 months to get it right. Which is, everything's gone. So we're paying the rent, and that's pretty much all it's whatever. We're no different than pretty much all Americans right now who are out of work. And I think it's, it's unprecedented. And I think it's the time, like, the federal government really ought to be picking up the tab here for its citizens. And, like I said, we're trying to make the best of it and do all kinds of stuff that I couldn't do when I was in the restaurant. So, when you go to work for 12 or 15 hours a day, you don't eat right, or you don't exercise, or you don't get any natural vitamin D, or you don't see the sun, or you don't see your kids, or, so or you don't read, or, so I'm trying to, embrace those things and not, fight against them, and just be like, this is what the day is.
Yeah. You're finding life outside the kitchen. That's exciting.
Which is nice. It takes good therapy. It takes, I spend a lot of money in therapy to just make sure that I'm okay here. But
the plan is that the prune is staying closed until there's a definitive solution to this.
Some vaccine, or some definitive. We don't put ourselves at risk. We don't put customers at risk. We don't put our staff at risk. And even just I cooked a socially distant, I haven't seen these two friends of mine in, what is it now, 4 months. So they came over to our outside, we went to the East River Park. We found a bench. I brought the little wagon over, with the deviled eggs and the bottle of rosé, and even cooking in that environment just at home for friends. I'm I think I'm terrible, because I just have cook habits. I'm oh, let me taste this. Let me have a spoonful of this. And I can't, they're so ingrained, these habits. It's I don't know how I would break them in the restaurant, or how anyone is breaking them, or what you're doing, how you're tasting food when you have a mask on. And,
right. So. Yeah, and then you just add, the more people you add to the mix, diners in the restaurant, whatever it may be, you're increasing risk. Yeah. And that's even just with people, as you said, being careful, right? How many people are idiots are going to walk in refusing to wear a mask, or not wear it at the right time, and all that. Yeah. So, the show is, it's primarily about the Hamilton experience. I'm generally interested in people's paths post Hamilton, and people who are in interesting jobs or do interesting things. And you're certainly one of those people. But I guess to go back, how did you end up at Hamilton?
It's really, really funny. I went to my last 2 years of high school. I went to boarding school, which was it was very odd for my immediate family for one of us to be in boarding school. It was not a typical, that wasn't what was going on with my family at the time. But I guess I was smart enough, and my mom was worried about me enough. She was like, let's try and get you into boarding school, because your public school right now, this is bad for you. So I really loved my boarding school experience so much. And at the time I was like, I want to go somewhere that feels like this, that's small, that is, challenging academically, that where I can, succeed and grow. And, I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to be active in the campus community. So I wanted a feeling that was a lot like private boarding school, because I just fell in love with my boarding school when I was in high school. And interestingly, when I was in high school, I rowed, and I was probably better at rowing than I was at basketball. And so I got a little bit of attention from some Ivy League schools about rowing. But I didn't want to row. I did not want to row in college. And So Hamilton, we went on sort of the tour of the like little Ivies. We went to Colgate, we went to Hamilton, Colby, Bowdoin, all the NESCAC schools. And I don't know, I went to Hamilton and we did the campus tour. And I remember I was like really I was a little bit sick that day or had a cold. And I don't know, we drove off campus and I was like, Mom, that's where I want to go. And she looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, what is it about Hamilton? And I didn't have my finger on it or didn't have anything about it. I just was like, that's where I want to go. And I applied early decision. I got in. So it was like a done deal by November of my senior year of high school. So I was like, I'm done. So.
And when you got there, did you feel like you made the right decision? Did all the things you liked about it then?
No, man. It's crazy. Between the time that happened and then the following fall, when I arrived on campus, the night before I arrived on campus, we stayed in a hotel. Just we lived far enough away. We had to stay in a hotel, and I was having like a panic attack, epic proportions. Like I was bawling my brains out, and I was begging my mother to not make me go. I was crying. I was screaming. I was like, do not make me go. I don't want to go. This is the wrong thing. And I was just like, I will volunteer. I'll join the Peace Corps. I'll do anything not to go here. Please don't make me go. And I really, I think, but I don't know, it's hard to look back on that time. Like I didn't know that I was queer at that time. I had no idea, but I think that there was something sort of going on that I was like, this is not going to be the right fit. And I was very socially awkward, and I was very, I was in, I forget what dorm. There's a couple big dorms like near the library.
North. Okay, North.
Yeah, I was in North, and I was with 3 other women, and I was just like, I just didn't know. I didn't know what I had gotten myself into.
Yeah. I mean, you dropped in the middle of this bunch of strangers who you're not going to live with. And if you're, trying to figure out who the hell you are, to then get mixed in with all that crap is just like, it's a whirlwind.
Yeah. I didn't know. I don't think I'm alone in that feeling. Like, I don't think it's.
No, you're I mean, there's a lot of what you're saying it was exactly my experience the night before also. Yeah. Down to being in a hotel we were, I think, just somewhere outside of Utica. It was the same thing. The same thing. My mom, who grew up in Brooklyn, never drove. So we took the train up and stayed in a hotel the night before. And I remember standing in the parking lot of the hotel waiting for a cab to come pick us up to take us to campus. Wow. Now imagine arriving on that campus
in a cab.
First day in a taxi. I felt great about that. Yeah. But I remember the night before my mom kept saying to me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I thought I was fine, but realizing after the fact that I probably was borderline having a panic attack also, like, "Oh my God, what am I doing?"
Yeah. How did you
Yeah, I thought I was going to play college football. And I only had looked at schools that were recruiting me, and my goal was get into the best school I could possibly get into and use football for that. I wasn't going to go pro. No big D1 school was looking at me. Like a couple of Columbia sniffed for a second and realized what a crap student I was, and they bailed on me. But other than that, so I was just going to use it to get into the best school possible, and that was Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of rough moments my senior year of high school. My mom had gotten sick, and it just made me rethink things, and I just wasn't interested in football anymore. But it's what got me in, so I was like, I have to go. And I think part of my dread that night before was I don't want to play football. And
your freshman year?
No, right at the end of orientation week, when all the upperclassmen were coming back to start the season, I got up the morning of the first practice and went in to Coach Steve Frank at the time, went to his office, and I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
And, like shaking. Like I can't do it. I said, my heart's not in it. he said, you haven't even tried it. How do you know? I said, like, my heart's not in it. And he said, well, just try it. I'm like, if I do it, I know my heart's not in it. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to me. That's not fair to all these other people on the team. I was like, I better just end it now. And man, did that guy hate me for the next 4 years.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm like, yeah. My campus job, as part of my financial aid package, I worked in the equipment room in the athletic department.
Yeah.
With D. Murph, and that guy, the football coach. So good.
So my recollection of you hooping it up was banging around under the boards a lot.
Yeah. I was, I'm 6 feet, and I guess for NESCAC that was like pretty big. But I'm like a 6-footer. I didn't, I couldn't get up and down the floor very well. I was a little, slow, but I could shoot outside a little bit, and I love playing basketball. I just loved it so much. It really probably, saved I loved it. It was great. I love playing basketball, and I love competition, and I love being on a team. I love practice. I love practice more than I love games. I love playing basketball. So.
That's awesome. I went to quite a lot of your games. I enjoyed it, both just covering sports for either Spectator or for the radio station. And then I had a very good friend from high school who was on the men's team. So I used to end up watching just a lot of basketball. I enjoy watching it. So I used to catch a lot of your games. It was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was really good.
So you're nervous the night before, not quite sure who you are or what's going to happen. How does that transform into the Ashley Merriman that people knew as the head of the Rainbow Alliance and a pretty outspoken person on campus?
Well, I think it's, it's my first or second, my first week on campus, you get your actual Facebook.
That's right. Remember that?
Actually, it's unbelievable. Very old. So you get your actual Facebook, and somewhere in there is like, oh, you can join the environmental club or the college Republicans or the hiking team. There's all the clubs and groups, and there was one that was it was at the time called Glibsa, which was lesbian. And I was, I love, for whatever reason, I just love brochures. So I was like, I'm just reading this. I was happy to read it. And I came across that, and it sort of like stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, oh, like that's what's wrong with me. Like, fuck, like I had a very like, oh no, like this is what's wrong with me. Just reading the words, like,
wow.
Whoa, shit, and I was very upset. And there was a guy on campus at the time. He was a senior, and it was just a phone number. And it was, pre-cell phone, obviously, it was maybe even pre-email. And I called him up, and I was crying, and I was very hysterical. And he was like, it's okay. I was very, very upset. And he told me that there was a separate group that was very private, and it was called Pride or something like that. And it was a group that at the time had to meet in secret, and the location changed every week because people were afraid. And so I went to my first very secret Pride meeting, and there was maybe 6 or 7 people there, including me. And I just cried the whole time. I was so upset. I could not believe that I was gay. I was very upset about it. I was like, my whole picket fence is gone. Everything's ruined. My parents are going to be so mad. It was, and I'm really in the wrong place. And I just was like, this is very over. And I would not say that I was suicidal, but I was like, this is bad. This is really bad. And that's how it started. And then at that meeting, I met someone who was a lot like me, who was closeted on a athletic team and was very popular, like was in a sorority. like super popular. And I was like, okay. And we became friends. And so I started to be able to see like, okay, like things are going to be okay. Or I'm going to have one friend, and look at this friend who can get into the Greek system and is very popular, and she's fine and it'll be okay. So, that spring I started, I cut all my hair off and I came out, and, I started to just be okay. I started to be okay with myself. And I think at the time it was very different, of course, than it is now. It was 1998. That's when I graduated. It was 1994. And it was just different. It was a different time. And, as you know, like I had a lot of like shit go on campus, and, people weren't, a lot of people were great and some people weren't. And, I think that's probably in the end, I'm old enough now and I'm far enough away from it now to be able to say, like, I think that's probably how it was for just about everyone. Like, it was a fine experience, and some people were really, really great, and some people like really sucked.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just, no one else was going to run that group, the GLIBSA, or the Rainbow Alliance. No one else was going to do it. No one else was maybe out after that year on campus. And so I wanted to do it, and I was excited about doing it. And
well, I imagine I can tell it took a tremendous amount of bravery, especially if, you started from a place of a meeting in secrecy because people were afraid, to, in a very short amount of time, relatively speaking, to then turn around and be out and then be, on campus, at the forefront of it. Yeah. Did you continue to have any concern or fear, or?
No, I really didn't. I think, people, there's a couple incidences throughout my time that were like, this isn't great, or this is a little scary, or I don't like this. But again, being so far away from that experience now and looking back on it, it's like, I think probably a lot of people had those experiences, not specifically related to being gay, but I think for sure a lot of women did. Were, experiencing sexual harassment or date rape or things like that, or just the weirdos were having these experiences of like not fitting in. And so,
well, there was very much at the time, and I've been going back and reading old copies of The Spectator, trying to refresh my memory about what was going on campus. And man, I tell you, at that time, there were countless issues dedicated to concerns of safety on campus.
Yeah.
And I know you had a tremendously scary incident. I mean, you were attacked, right?
Yeah. My senior year, I was, finishing my job and coming home and getting, someone hit me over the head with a bottle. And I didn't want to say anything about it because I was just like fucking sick of it. And I was just like, just going to work, man. Like going to work, trying to go to class, like just. But my suite mates at the time were like really pushed me to like call campus security, and it wasn't great. It was fucked up. It was bad. And I look back on it now in these like sort of series of events, like every little while. And I honestly wonder if it was just like one person, like who just was like, had like kind of weird, or like had it out, or I don't know.
Right.
Rather than I don't know. It was so specific and so like targeted, and so like that it makes me I don't know. That's what I've thought over the years. Like I was one person who I pissed off, or who I don't know.
And they never caught the person?
No, they never caught the person. And I really I put the kibosh on, like, I just wanted to go to school.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in your questions that you emailed me, like what's one thing you wish someone had told you? It's like, I wish someone had been like, just go to school. Don't you worry about what other people are doing, and just get yourself the education that you came here to get and try and have a good time. And right after that incident, it was like in the fall of my senior year, I was like, pardon my French, I was like, fuck all this. Like, I started to have a really good time. I had my best basketball season ever. I was in the best shape of my life. I finally was like, I fell in love with a girl, and I went to parties. I like had an actual collegiate experience when I was like, I'm done with the gay straight alliance. Like, someone else can take this. I'm just going to try and be a student on campus and like have a campus experience. And
well, good for you. I imagine you had the weight of the world on your shoulders for quite a while, you know.
Yeah, and it felt like it, but I don't know. Once I let go of it, it was like, I don't know, this could be kind of fun. Yeah. And I think that that's like a very, at this time looking on it, like not everyone can do that. And if someone had told me that, you know, my junior year, my sophomore year, you know, I would have laughed at them and, you know, been like, you're crazy. I can't do that. I have all this, you know, responsibility. And, you know, I think it's probably very similar to how I feel now as a 44-year-old looking at 22-year-olds. Like, you guys are going to be just fine. Like, just, so I think it's in a, you know, short period of time, 4 years of like, well, I'm a senior and I can look back on this and be like, man, forget all that and just have a good time. Like, why don't you concentrate on your studies and like go to class and concentrate on like playing basketball well. And
right. And then where does cooking come in?
Well, I had my first job that I ever got, I was like 12, 13. And my mom made me get an after school job. And so I washed dishes after school, and it was my summer job and I loved it. I just totally fell in love with the kitchen. And, I did it all throughout high school and I did it all throughout college. So every time I would go home for break, I would pick up shifts. Every summer I would go and I would just work my brains out. So I grew up in a very like tourist, you know, summertime tourist area, and population of the area would just like triple, quadruple in the summer. And that's where the money is. And so I would just work and work and work. And I just fell in love with cooking, but the actual like cooking and cleaning, it wasn't like the food, if that makes sense. It was like the actual task of like putting a piece of fish in a pan, or, you know, grilling a steak, or, you know, sweeping the floor. It was the physical, like actual task of those things, not the romance of food.
Sure.
So I graduated from Hamilton and I moved out to Seattle, and I was cooking. And I had another job for a little while, for some years. I tried to get away from it. And then I just kept coming back to it.
So it wasn't the plan. It was a passion.
Not the plan. And my parents were like, hi, this is not the plan. you I'm sure, like, it's a very different time. Like, you know, being a cook at the time was like, you're, as Anthony Bourdain famously said, like, you're either in your way or out of your way of prison. So you're on the way or on the way out. So it was very, you know, pirate ship, ragtag, you know, demented, it was not considered like a profession, and certainly not considered a profession for someone who had gone to boarding school and Hamilton College. So
you were an outsider in that crew.
I was, and I tried to get away from it. I tried to be like, let me use this education and let me use this degree and let me use this name, you know, Hamilton College, and let me try and fulfill the promise of this education. And
The draw was too great. It just pulled you back in.
I liked it too much.
Well, that's good. That means it's the right thing for you. That's great.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't have that. They struggle to find that.
Yeah, for sure.
Or they know what it is, but get hung up on what you're talking about, which is I'm going to go follow all my classmates onto Wall Street because that's what you do, or something like that, and I need to go make money and be concerned about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know how. I don't know how anyone makes any money.
So, how does the reality TV part of this come into be?
Well,
because that's a fun one. Everyone's like, did you hear? Remember Ashley Merriman?
Yeah.
She's on Top Chef. She's on TV.
Yeah, I was on Top Chef. So I was working at this. I worked in New York for some years, and then the girl that I was dating at the time, she got transferred to Seattle, and I was pretty psyched about it. I was, having a tough time in New York. Just like I make $9.50 an hour, and I work 60 hours a week. Just like, so bad. It's so hard. Very hard to enjoy the city or anything that the city has to offer when you are living like that. And so we moved to Seattle, and I started working for some great chefs, and I was on a path of like, this is what I want, this is what I'm after. And so I got this job. I took my first executive chef position at this restaurant in downtown Seattle, and I started to get some local media attention. I got a great review in the Seattle Times. I got a great review in the PI. All the magazines in Seattle started to pay attention, and there's like a little bit of buzz. And Top Chef that year, they were coming off a really bad season, and where professional cooks started to be like, this show is just a joke. And the cooks that they get are jokes. And I think, but I don't know for sure, that this is like one of the first years they started to really actively recruit cooks and chefs. And so one day I'm, doing whatever in the kitchen, and someone's like, someone from Top Chef's calling. And I was like, shut up, just get out of here. I thought he was joking around, but it turns out Top Chef's in town, and they want to talk to me. And what I know is they talked to, the writers and the magazine editors and the people who had started giving me attention, and who's coming up, like who are the new chefs coming. And so that's how I ended up. They came to the restaurant, and I tried out. I did a private interview, and I didn't go to a big casting call. And I went to a private interview, and it just sort of went from there. So I went to a private interview. They came to the restaurant. They ate, the casting directors, and yada, yada, yada. I went on. So they called, and they said, you go on. And again, I was just, I'm now, I guess I'm now 11 or 12 years past that, 10, something like that. Again, I just went into it like thinking like I was very naive going into it. So I thought you could go on television and be like good at your job and be a nice person, and you would be okay. So just when I'm looking back on it now, I'm like, that is so stupid. And
they're looking for drama. They're trying to manufacture drama. I mean, did you find yourself watching it being like, that's not what happened? Or
I would say that they definitely had an editing angle, but if I had some coaching, or if I was coaching someone now, so people who now work for me have gone through some of these processes of like going Chopped or going on, and it's very clear, like you just have to remember, like the casting directors and the producers and the directors, they have a job to do, and it's to tell a story.
Yeah.
And it's still definitely your story. The words come out of your mouth, but it's just like the questions you're asking me right now. So you answer the questions that are asked of you. Okay, like, hey, like, I'm done talking about that. Forget all that.
Yeah.
So, they had a very clear story to tell about me. And unfortunately, the interview process, when you're in those one-on-one interviews, like, there's a lot of ways to, it's a very difficult environment to be in. So you land, you go to the airport, and you're like, I'm going to Vegas. And I found out about a week ago that I'm going to Vegas. And you go for 7 weeks. And you go for 7 weeks, whether you're the first one off or you're the last one off. And, the first thing they do when they pick you up is they take your phone, and they take your books, they go through your luggage. They, make sure that there's no recipes, and they just really cut off, and you don't have a watch, and you can't read the newspaper, and it's.
Are you going out of your mind? I mean, it's borderline torture.
It is, but it's all designed to get you to interact exclusively with the 16 other people that you're there with. So there's no, let me go read a book. There's no book to read. There's no television to watch. There's no watch to look at, phone to look at. It's just designed. And there's very long days. There's a lot of alcohol. And there's a lot of like, hello, I'm going to wake you up in the middle of the night for your one-on-one interview. So,
wow.
I take it easy on everyone who finds themselves in those situations. I feel a lot of empathy for them.
Yeah, I imagine. It's not a normal. It doesn't sound like a normal human experience. No,
it's not. It's not. And I think the people who do well in them and are successful are like unbelievably like talented humans. It's and everyone wants to know, like, wait, do you really only have 20 minutes? Do they really push, certain chefs?
Yeah.
You really have 20 minutes, and they really don't push certain chefs to win. Like, you win, I promise. Like, I really promise. It's my own experience. So
that's interesting. Like, do you feel like it helped you professionally?
No.
Really?
I think I would have the same job and make the same amount of money and have the same friends and all the things that are important to me. Like, I think I would be the same without having done it. So,
yeah.
I think if I were a different person, like, I could have parlayed it into different.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I don't know you well at all, but what I've seen of you, and certainly of you and your wife, the two of you don't strike me as the type to want to go and make the easy buck and capitalize on it. There's more meaning behind what you're doing.
I think you can do it if you want to do it, but you have to work at doing it. If you don't, I think I finished like middle of the road. You gotta put some effort into it if you want to parlay it into something bigger or better.
And you're not slapping the Top Chef logo everywhere and prune and
champion today. No.
So working in a kitchen, you said it at the top. It's hard living.
It is. You have to love it. Because if you don't, at least at this point in your career, in my career, like, you're just, we always say, or my wife and I always say, like, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. Well, if you spend your days just like, I just hate going to work, like, that's how you spend your life. So I work a lot, but for me, most of it doesn't really feel, most days it doesn't feel like work. It's like, I'm going to go do this thing I really want to do, or I'm going to go, and at this point in my career, it's like, I'm going to go teach. I'm going to go listen. I'm going to go clean. There's obviously like tons of just like basic, like, I'm going to go wash dishes. I'm going to go put food up for a customer to eat. But there's also, there's tons of teaching. There's tons of conversation. There's tons of listening. There's tons of like growth. There's tons of learning. So you have to love it.
Yeah.
If just like anyone, I think being a chef is no different than whoever works 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, like you got to enjoy yourself while you're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I said before that a lot of people don't find that, so I think it's admirable that you found something you enjoy. One of the things that struck me, I mentioned the piece your wife wrote about the closing of the restaurant. I think the average person doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about all that goes in to running a restaurant.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, you marvel at the things you don't think about. Right. And even just down to the idea that there's a walk-in full of perishable food, and what are we going to do with this? And where's that going to go? And then, that's in a special, instance like shutting down, but even on a daily basis of running the business, you have to factor that into how you're running the business. Never mind, are customers going to come in or not? And is someone going to be grumpy and write a bad review and hurt your chances and so forth? I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
There's so many variables. And because there's so many variables and the margins to begin with are so thin, it's, increasingly, as she wrote, it's increasingly and now just like it's totally untenable.
Yeah.
There's no way to proceed as is in the restaurant industry unless you're a very big chain. There's just no.
So what happens, do you think, on the other side of this in the restaurant business? I mean, I know restaurants open and close in New York every day. Yeah. I imagine the restaurant scene in New York City is going to be a lot different on the other side.
I think it will be. I think it will do some, pretty serious weeding out of.
Yeah.
And again, it's not very clear. Like, it's not all independent restaurants. It's definitely not that, and it's not all run of the mill average. Oh, we go here once a week just because it's good and they have a nice roast chicken. It's not all of them. It's not all fast casual. It's not all fine dining. So it's not clear who will be gone, but a lot of people will be gone, and it's not because they're bad at business or bad owners. It's just, I think, I don't know what's going to happen after this. There has to be a vaccine.
Right.
But that's true for everybody.
Right.
I hope very much, and this isn't just like restaurant exclusive, like I will find it just like obscene if we go through this and don't look at all the factors that made this so much worse than it had to be without making some serious change. So how can it be that most Americans are like, I will risk my life to go to work because I must go to work because I must earn a paycheck because I don't have 2 months worth of savings in the bank. Or questions about healthcare, or just basic questions of like, how can we be so much worse? So I will find it obscene if we go through all this and no significant change or something happens that addresses these sort of larger problems about like, why doesn't anyone have any money in the bank?
Right.
That we couldn't just like shut it down entirely for 3 months and say no.
Right. Or why is this virus infecting certain types of people more than others, and we're just okay with that, right? Or
right. Or what? And then the next step, like, why are those people so much more affected by these problems? Or what does this say about the healthcare system? Or there's so many different questions to look at that. I hope something bigger happens other than like, we're just going to fire up the stoves again, turn on the ovens, and come, the day there's a vaccine or everyone's vaccinated, like, come on in. Like, gosh, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope, and not just for my industry, but for everyone's sake.
Well, I feel like, maybe not in New York, but certainly here and other places in the country, that is what's happening in your industry. There are places up here that are open and firing away, and people jamming in and taking their masks off to eat inside. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm curious. when you got into this business, into cooking and working in kitchens, the little I've heard about what the environment can be like in a kitchen, it's not always the easiest place in the world to work. Were you dealing with a lot of the same crap that you dealt with that we talked about on campus when you got out?
At all.
Really?
I think if you believe everything which I do, like believe everything you read in the press about what it's like for women or for gay people or for Black and brown folks, like for being in the hospitality industry, it's not particularly hospitable to our own. I will say I have had I guess maybe a unique experience, but I'm like, this has been the most welcoming, the greatest, most fun, hilarious, outstanding set of humans that I've ever been around across the board. I've never, as one does, just like going through the world, you can never say never. Like, of course, sure, I've had some like, well, she's kind of mean over there.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That boss kind of sucked, or
yeah.
Everyone has that, but I have not found that my gender or my sexuality has been a significant or setback in any way in my day-to-day professional life. I think, but I don't know, that it might be like press-wise, but I don't know. I don't know.
Meaning what?
Just meaning like the press, at least in the last 5 to 8 years, I would say, is interested much more so than they have been previously in talking to women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To women chefs who run significant kitchens, and or talking to gay people, or there is a push and interest in this, and I don't know, I think I do okay for myself. I'm like, I did go on national television in 2 different arenas. I was on Iron Chef. I was on Top Chef. I have 2 stars in the New York Times. I have 3 stars in the Seattle Times. Like, I think I'm okay at my job. And I don't know, my phone in this way does not ring. So I don't know what that's about. And I don't really care. That's not why I'm in the business.
Yeah.
I would say if I'm ever looking at it, in my professional career, it has never been in my workplace. And I have some like, is that why? Or I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I remember, I think it was when that whole spotted pig thing was going on, and the Post picked up whatever Eater was writing about, and the Eater just seemed to have it out for you two. Yeah. I love you. I mean, reading you in those articles was great, because you were just like, this is who we are. Like, we're doing this. Like, like there was no, you weren't apologetic. You weren't trying to hide from what you're doing. And you were like, we're going to go run this kitchen. And I thought that was admirable.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a tough time. It was a really tough time. And we were not into it. And I wish we had done a better job ambassadoring the goals. But we were really caught off guard. Like the whole, it all Sam Sifton, who's the editor of the Times, the food editor of the New York Times, he married us. And he called us one morning and he was like, what are you girls doing? And we thought we were talking to Sam. Like, Sam, I thought we were talking to Sam.
Yeah.
But we were not talking to Sam who married us. We were talking to Sam, the editor of the food section of the New York Times.
Yeah.
So every quote that came out of our head that morning was like, it was between, it wasn't
friends talking, right? You weren't choosing your words as carefully as you would if you were talking to a reporter, of course.
So, that's a scoop just for you. No one knows. Seriously, that's like no one knows that one, but that's an inside scoop. All yours.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What I've read since then is just like, it happened and didn't work out, and now we're back doing our thing. and you were who you were. You know what I mean? I thought that was really really remarkable.
Hallmark, I would say, of sort of both of our career trajectory is just like, I don't blow with the wind, or I'm not like, oh, now we're doing foam, or now we do menu, now we do hot pesto. It's like,
right.
That's all fine. I think that those things are great, but I just am like, I'm just going to go this way. I'm just going to go my way and stay the course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think trends like foam and weird textures aside, do you think, back to the point about things changing on the other side of this pandemic, does the industry, everyone loves to talk about disruption, right? This is certainly a disruption, but does the industry change in any way, do you think? Do you think the restaurants find a better way or a different way to do things?
I really hope so. I hope, and I hope it's, when a lot of times when we talk about the industry, we're talking about restaurants like Prune, or we're talking about like New York or Boston, major city known restaurants, like all the cool spots that you go to. But we're not talking about restaurants like the friggin' Ground Round in Sioux City, Iowa. Like we're not, but that is a restaurant. And I'm really worried about the waiter at that restaurant and the cook at that restaurant. In some ways, more so than I am worried about my own waiter or my own cook. Like, I know I'm paying them properly. I know what the minimum wage is in New York. I know how much money a waiter makes in New York, generally speaking. So I hope the industry, it has to be sort of like a much rounder or bigger look. It's not just these cool hip restaurants where the waiter is like taking home $500 a night and the cook is making 120. Like, that's wrong, and I would like to address that, but it's part of a larger problem. It's like about federal minimum wage, it's about tipping, it's about healthcare, and those are just national conversations, not industry specific.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, to your point, like, what are we going to learn from this and do something about all that ails us, not just this virus, but a lot of issues. There's been a lot of talk on this show about the importance of, certainly about the importance of being engaged in the political process, but more so at the local level. And we need to do that. So, well, first of all, you seem great. You seem comfortable. You seem, at peace with things, even though it's not a peaceful time. That's admirable.
I feel pretty good. I feel all right.
That's good. So, so back to Hamilton, for the 19, 20-year-old who isn't comfortable right now and dealing with things you dealt with, what kind of wisdom would you give them?
I would just say, in the big picture, like, you're going to be okay. And if there's ever 1 minute that you're like, hey, I'm not okay, man, you got to reach out. You got to reach out, and you're not alone. So both things are true. Like, you're really going to be okay. I promise you're going to be okay. And Hamilton's not it. It's not the end. It's just one year, one semester, one class, one incident in a very long line of a very long life. If there's ever a moment that you're really, really not okay, like, you got to reach out. You got to talk to someone. So, and I would say, I guess looking back at Hamilton, like, what I really did not do is like get my education. Like, I didn't. I played basketball, which I loved, and I got a certain kind of education doing that, and I ran this gay group, which I loved, and I got a certain education doing that. But boy, I did not put my nose down and put my head in the books. I really didn't. And
well, that's one place where our experience was very similar, actually.
God damn. Why go to Hamilton? Why spend all that money if you're not going to? So I would, everyone's on their own path and is going to do their own thing. But man, looking back on it, I wish I had gotten after it a little bit more in my studies. So I would say to a young person now, like, I don't know, try and get after it a little bit.
when we were emailing about doing this, you had mentioned that you had largely avoided Hamilton for the 20 plus years.
Yeah.
What was that, a conscious decision? What's the reason behind that?
Just like I didn't really have a good time, and the friends that I did take away from there, it's are pretty few and far between. Maybe 3 or 4, maybe. I don't know. I Hamilton. I think whatever. I gave my time to Hamilton, and it was from 1994 to 1998. And I'm interested in young people now, and I'm not interested in Hamilton specific.
I got you. And honestly, that's not necessarily what I'm doing about it. I'm interested in, as I said in my note to you, and I've talked about this before, is it's a place that we all coexist in this little hill in the middle of nowhere, and we're all going through some kind of shit, right? We all have our own shit that's going on. Some are going through more shit than others, clearly, sure. and I think a lot of us are oblivious to that, right? Or know that it's going on and maybe don't care, or and I think back to the crap that was going on your senior year that touched off the creation of a Safe Walks program and demonstrations on campus for and against, right? When it was like a woman was attacked on campus, and then we had people thinking A, she made it up, B, that hate doesn't exist or violence doesn't exist. What the hell's going on here? What was interesting to me is to understand from you 20 years later, is there anything going on? I didn't think you were going to respond, honestly. And for you to respond to say that, it's time to have the conversation. I'm glad you did. But I think it's important for kids on campus to understand, for someone like you who went through all that you went through on that campus, to sit here today and say it's going to get better, and it is better, and you're sitting there happy, having a drink and enjoing yourself. Yeah. I think it's important for people to know that,
They should know it. They should know it. It's just, it's going to get better. And if you can, I don't know, if you can, like, I hope it gets better when you're there. Like, I hope it gets better when you're there. Because if you can find it, there's great people everywhere, and including Hamilton. And maybe there's not very many, or there's not very many that look like you, or that act like you, or talk like you, or come from the same socioeconomic background, or any of that. But they're there, and if you can, try and find them, or if you can, find, and this is just true in life. Like, just try and find your bright spots, or your spots where you can just buckle down for the day and say, like, God, boy, do I love this one class, or shit, man, the leaves today on campus on the days, or the run I took, or whatever those things are. Like, of course, I don't think that very many people at that age have that. I'm old now. I have children. I supervise constantly 18 to 30-year-olds. That's my job in life. Yeah. I know that this is very difficult. And if someone my age was telling me that when I was there, I'd be like, whatever, man, you don't even understand what's going on. But it just bears repeating.
I so enjoyed that conversation. Ever since I recorded that with Ashley, I keep thinking back to her talking about having to have a meeting in secret. To think that there were people on campus who were so afraid to divulge their sexual orientation that they had to have meetings in secret. It's just... I get angry at myself for being so oblivious that there were people in that much pain. That's something I wish I had known. I wish I had known that there were people suffering like that who likely could have used an outreach. And as Ashley says towards the end there, reach out. If you are one of those people who are suffering, reach out. because I'd like to think that there's somebody like me on campus who may not be aware, but if they were, would like to do something about it. So go find one of those people if you're in need of that. Or reach out now. Reach out to the show now, and reach out to me now, and we'll get you help. My thanks to Ashley Merriman for a wonderful conversation. It was so great to connect with her. And when Prune finally does open, I'll be one of the first people there to enjoy a meal. I can't wait for that moment. You have been listening to Had I Known on WHCL-FM. Had I Known Show on social media. hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. Again, hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. There you can get all previous episodes of this show, and where later today we'll post this episode. My thanks, as always, to Dr. Michael Woods for supplying all the music on this show. And, of course, as always, Doc will play us out. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.